What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So as everyone's hanging out, especially in the US and Canada, waiting for these Switch 2 pre-orders to go up, we are starting to hear more and more about Nintendo's strategy when it comes to stocking the system in the US, and we even have what seems to be an estimate from analysts as to how much the Switch 2 actually cost Nintendo, and it seemed to surprise some people online, but we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Ubisoft saying the quiet part loud when it comes to game ownership and how they view the digital games that they sell. And then we also have Sony making a big Last of Us announcement for fans all across the world. And no, unfortunately, it's not a new game. It's actually a re-release of some of the older titles, and that went over well online. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or the link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Nintendo Switch Online and new games heading into that Nintendo Switch expansion pass service. This would be for the Sega Genesis, which I feel like a lot of people forgot was even there, because kind of felt like Nintendo forgot it was, or Sega forgot it was, someone forgot. Basically everyone forgot, but looks like Nintendo does have an update for it with 3 games going into the service. They have this trailer here for it, and it looks like we have Streets of Rage, eSWAT City Under Siege, and Super Thunderblade. Now, out of the 3, for me anyway, clearly the one that I remember the most is Streets of Rage. Although I do remember seeing eSWAT, like this, the character there on the front of a Genesis cartridge we used to have at the store all the time, just sitting right there. So, I mean, it might be worth trying, but obviously the big one, Streets of Rage, is the one I recommend, and you can do 2 players at the same time, and just a really solid classic beat-em-up game. But these titles are now in the service and available currently, so go check them out. Also, with Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders going live across the world in different regions, there also is a major rush for additional storage for the system. As we know, you need that MicroExpress SD card. So yes, it costs more money, but it's also a lot faster, and we're hoping, as we'll see when people start actually getting the system, will work to eliminate a large amount of load times, or at least cut them down significantly. Now, the thing you want to look out for is if you are getting that Express style SD card. Luckily, for example, like here is a listing on Amazon. They have started to add Nintendo Switch 2 to the title for it, so it makes it a little easier to pick this one out. But again, you're looking for just Express SD card or micro SD Express card, okay? So usually it'll have some sort of speed rating in there as well. Like, for example, this one is 600 megabytes per second. It should be significantly higher than the standard micro SD cards we're working with. Now, I saw the 256 gigabyte from Lexar. That one was sitting just under $50. The 512 gigabyte is just under $100. And from what I've seen, the 1 terabyte is like closer to $200. So not necessarily a full price reset for SD cards or additional storage, as we saw with the Switch when we had some cards that were like double what that terabyte is, but certainly not as cheap as we were enjoying with SD cards on the current Switch. But again, we'll see what the load times look like there with the new hardware. Oh, and we got another confirmation when it comes to those Nintendo Switch 2 Enhanced Editions, and if everything is indeed on the cartridge. This we can see posted up, and this is coming to us from Vooks, who did get a Nintendo spokesperson on the record, where they say that physical versions of Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games will include the original Switch game and its upgrade pack all on the same cart. They are exclusively Nintendo Switch 2 game cards with no download code. They do say, though, some publishers may release Switch 2 Edition games as download codes in physical packaging with no game card, which we've seen that already. I mean, we see that with all these different systems where you might get a code inside for just a digital download. So that's not off the table, but the ones that have been going around, like Breath of the Wild as an example, the Switch 2 version, according to this Nintendo spokesperson, is indeed all on a single cartridge. And in fact, you would assume it's a red Switch 2 cartridge. Again, we'll have complete confirmation when these things come out. People can buy them, open them up, but for now, it looks like, according to Nintendo, everything's on the cartridge, and that's good news. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo's current strategy when it comes to stocking this system all around the world, but especially in the US with the whole tariff situation that was, well, still technically ongoing, but we know there is a 90-day pause on, for example, the 46% tariffs that were in place for Vietnam, which is a major part now of Nintendo's manufacturing and distribution of their Switch 2, and it kind of put that into place to diversify a bit from China, which has a whole thing when it comes to tariffs as well. Big back and forth. Like there's the percentages keep going up when it comes to that. But at least right now for Vietnam, those are sitting at 10% with that 90-day pause. Well, we have a story here from Takashi Machizuki. This is over at Bloomberg. We can see first, though, he tweeted this out, where he says, data shows Nintendo allocating almost entire made-in-Vietnam game consoles to the US, which is in stark contrast with months before, as it tries to find ways to get around Trump tariff on goods from China. Also, the story is free for a week, so there's a link below. You can check it out there if you want to read further. But there's a nice little chart here that demonstrates this well, where you can see, just the amount of exports from their Vietnam production. Look how much more it is right now for the US. This starting in January, but really ramping up in February. And I'm sure when we see data, or if they do get it, for March, it'll probably be similar to that February bar, but basically showing that Nintendo is pushing heavy amounts of Switch 2 systems from Vietnam to the US, which is why the tariffs coming in at 46% was such a shock to Nintendo, it seems anyway. And that's why they had to put things on hold when it comes to pre-orders, to make sure they have everything in line. Now, they do go on further in the report to say the company is preparing for what the industry expects to be the largest gaming console launch in the industry. Poseidon Corp, one of the three main Switch 2 assemblers, shipped more devices in February to the US from Vietnam than in the previous 6 months combined, according to customs data provided by NBD. That suggests Nintendo can build a stockpile of millions of consoles from the Southeast Asian country in time for the June launch. This is a quote from Hideki Yasuda of Toyo Security saying, "We believe the Switch 2's bill of materials is around $400, meaning Nintendo would still be selling consoles at a loss in the US with the 10% tariff, but the loss would be something Nintendo would be able to absorb. If tariffs stay at 10%, Nintendo probably keeps pricing at $450 and just takes the hit on margin." This is from Bernstein analyst Robin Zhu. At 46% Vietnam tariffs, I expect them to raise by $50 to $100. It's kind of what I was thinking. I figured they would push things up $50, but I guess they could have gone $100, so it would have been a $550 system or a $600 bundle, which, that's tough. But a $400 bill of materials on the Switch 2, people were hoping it'd be $400. $450 is cutting it close then with the 10% tariffs on top. And there's still other things that have to happen when it comes to distribution, as we've talked about tariffs, but also shipping and get everything set up. Yes, they would technically be taking a loss on the Switch 2 to sell in the US with a 10% tariff in place. People were thinking, myself included, that Nintendo would be trying to make money on the Switch 2. And I'm sure in other regions they are. But the build of materials on the Switch 2 is interesting coming in at $400. To me, it does show that Nintendo was trying to somewhat future-proof this device, and the big thing with this is I don't really see a lot of people pushing back on the hardware when it comes to the price point. I think people will look around and understand, oh wow, this is quite capable. It's more capable than the Steam Deck, and you see the pricing on that without a dock. And it does kind of make sense then in your mind. Same again with the ROG Ally X that it's drawing a lot of comparisons to, and you see that price, again, without a dock. And yeah, $450 sounds about right. Technically, $500 makes it so that Mario Kart is a $50 game, so that also sort of adds up in people's minds to go for that one. And it even looks like in some regions, based on the box that people are spotting online with retailers, it might even have a physical copy in there with the system. Again, it seems to be region specific. I haven't really seen with the US yet. We're kind of still waiting for a lot of the pre-order stuff to go up, and I'm sure more official box art to get out there. That's how we sort of know, or at least from what we see with marketing, that physical cartridge is in there in different regions. But in this case, a $400 build of materials, $450 sale price, Nintendo is, I guess, willing to take somewhat of a loss just to be able to sell this system at $450 and get as many out there as possible. And it's not even a small amount. Some analysts are expecting them to maybe potentially sell 15 to 17 million systems from June to the end of the holidays. So yeah, stockpiling systems in the US would be very, very important for them to, of course, be able to avoid maybe tariffs that pop up after the 90 days because they'll already be in the US. We'll see how all this works out, but yeah, it looks like Nintendo isn't necessarily messing around when it comes to the hardware in the Switch 2, and that was actually a question I had for the community here. How do you feel about that $450 price point based on the tech and everything you get in the box for the Switch 2? But we'll check in a little later on that. Next up, let's talk about Ubisoft and more wild comments when it comes to just ownership of games. They basically said the quiet part loud here, which we'll get to, but they've been on record saying some pretty crazy stuff. People, like gamers getting used to not owning their games is a headline that was going around all over the place. And it does seem like more and more as we go along, the publishers really show themselves when it comes to, well, this digital ownership and if that should even be a thing for customers. Well, in this case, it's actually coming down to the situation that's been unfolding around The Crew. As we know, that's a big thing right now because the game itself being pulled down means that it's useless, like it doesn't work. So they were starting to revoke just the license of the game that people had purchased digitally. And it seems weird because there are many games that are heavily reliant on an online connection to work in the first place. So should some of these publishers have to provide a way to play the game offline in some capacity if they decide to enter like end of life and make it legacy? I think most of us figure, yes, you should do that so the purchase still works, but Ubisoft sees it a different way. This is posted up by Polygon, who says Ubisoft responded to California gamers' The Crew shutdown lawsuit in late February, filing to dismiss the case. The company's lawyers argued in that filing, reviewed by Polygon, that there was no reason for players to believe they were purchasing unfettered ownership rights in the game. Ubisoft has made it clear, lawyers claim, that when you buy a copy of The Crew, you're merely buying a limited access license. Quote, frustrated with Ubisoft's recent decision to retire the game following a notice period delineated on the product's packaging, plaintiffs apply a kitchen sink approach on behalf of a putative class of nationwide customers, alleging 8 causes of action regarding violations of California's false advertising law, unfair competition law, and Consumer Legal Remedies Act, as well as common law fraud and breach of warranties claims. I'm not really surprised that Ubisoft would use this argument because it's pretty clear that what they see when it comes to their sales are more so movie tickets almost. The ability to rent the game, not own it. And it's something we pretty much looked at across the board as ownership. You could say back in the day when you would buy a disc with the entire game on it, but now when we have live service enabled games or games that just rely on an internet connection at all times, it is in their mind being more and more of a rental or even just a promise to then be able to access the game. The big thing here, though, is they, of course, shutting down The Crew servers means that your purchase is pretty much worthless at that point, and there is an expiration date on it. But while Ubisoft argues, oh, well, how would the people know that it was, why would they think that it was a purchase of some kind? Well, then apparently the defense or the people who are on the other side showed them, yeah, it says $20.99, like $2,099 for expiration or how long it's supposed to go on. So yeah, that's why. Not great for Ubisoft's argument there, but really to me, it's just more about the bigger picture when it comes to digital games in particular. See, The Crew, while it was a physical copy, clearly it had to rely on online servers, more on the digital side. And as we go further and further towards what is becoming less and less or just no physical media, it will just be completely on the digital side. And that means control being completely with the publishers and the platform holders and not at all with the consumer. That would be the biggest problem, and that, I think, is what people need to focus in more on, as opposed to trying really hard to keep physical games around. We can try as much as we want, but it's pretty clear that publishers, platform holders want digital. I mean, we even see it, I'd say the vast majority of consumers now, I mean, I know a lot of us are like, oh yeah, physical media. Very clear that many out there are just going with the convenience. Yeah, digital's great. It works for me because I don't have to have a wall of games. It's all right here on the SSD or what have you, and it's all linked to my account. So I can't necessarily have the game stolen from me. Well, I guess unless the publisher decides that it's time for that game to go away, and as we saw with The Crew, they can even revoke it from your library. We've had many instances of that, of different things here and there. Demos was a big one, or a game accidentally getting released early and then pulled back. So people now know that, yeah, they have the ability to do that. So how much control really lies with the consumer? Doesn't seem like much. Ubisoft just basically stood up and said the quiet part loud. We're selling the game, but we're not actually selling you the game. Next up, let's talk about Sony with a big-time announcement, The Last of Us collection. Okay, well, take a look. This is posted up. This is over on their official account saying 2 unforgettable stories in one package. Introducing The Last of Us Complete, coming to PS5 today. Well, we can take a look. This is over on the PlayStation Direct store. The Last of Us Complete Collector's Edition. It's on the PS5. It's $110, and they say experience the complete story that inspired the HBO show with definitive versions of 2 award-winning games featuring graphical gameplay improvements made possible by the PlayStation 5 console. So, I've already explained to you guys why this exists. Here we are again now with it actually being announced, coming out July 10th. They have pre-orders, I guess, up here live, so if you want to, you can go pick it up. And this is like the 4th, 5th time they've sold The Last of Us, but they're doing it again. It's clearly, as they mention here with the HBO show, for people who are finding the show for the first time and are unaware that it's a video game series. And yes, people are out there who are just now experiencing this for the first time. And it's a way for them to just, okay, one thing, I buy this one thing and that's it. Obviously in a PS5, you get what I'm saying? Like, you just this one game. You don't have to go out and piecemeal it together or anything. In fact, they mentioned what's in the box: a steelbook case with physical discs of Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2, both of those being the remastered ones. Left Behind prequel chapter, The Last of Us American Dreams comics 1 through 4 with new cover art, set of 4 lithographic art prints, and even, hey, look at this, a thank you letter from Neil Druckmann for buying the game for the 5th time. Now, just, again, I know that what this is for. We've talked about the audience that this has really been released for, and it's just not something that any of us are really looking for, I assume, at this point, because most of the people I'm sure watching this are aware of The Last of Us, have either played it or decided it's not a game they're really that interested in and have moved on. I don't know if this collection is going to sway your opinion all of a sudden. You're like, well, that's it. I'm getting the Last of Us Part 1 Remastered and Part 2 Remastered because they threw them together, and now they're charging $110 for it, and there's even a thank you letter from Neil Druckmann. I mean, how can I resist any longer? And in our last bit of news, let's actually talk about a story that we have some closure to now when it comes to Goldeneye. Do you remember when Goldeneye was added to the N64 application and then also added into Game Pass, and people were excited for it, but then realized there were some weird stipulations to it? And then, of course, people have been talking about that Goldeneye remake that leaked out online. Really cool stuff because you can go between the old visuals and the new visuals, and people were wondering, why didn't this come out? And some were wondering, oh, was it MGM? Was it Nintendo? Was it Microsoft? And, well, now we have a bit of an answer, I think, to that. We can see this, though. Let's start here. This was from Stephen Kick, and this is back in 2022. The studio head of Night Dive says, "We, Night Dive Studio, came this close to doing this," that being for Goldeneye, "but ultimately I'm thrilled to see Goldeneye returning to modern platforms and more thrilled that Rare is the studio to bring it back." By the way, MVG did reply here saying you should let me tell the tale sometime. Well, MVG, it looks like Steven waited 3 years or so, 2.5 years, and decided then to tell the story. This was actually talking with VGC, where the person asked, "Before we kick off, as a fan, I have to ask, what happened to your proposed GoldenEye 007 Remastered?" Stephen Kick replied, "Oh yeah, that was a real heartbreak, just because we had put in a lot of effort into pitching that. We had a dream team all set up, and we got by the MGM Eon side of things. That took a year, and then it was, okay, we're ready to go. Well, did you guys get the rights from Nintendo? Wait a minute, we thought you had that." And then Nintendo was like, "Yeah, no third party's ever going to touch any Nintendo stuff ever." Well, there you go. So, again, the question has been, who was holding up maybe even that GoldenEye remake? It's probably Nintendo. I know people were like, no, Nintendo would have been cool with that. No, it was Nintendo. It was Nintendo. Here's Stephen Kick now just reinforcing that a bit more with the GoldenEye remaster. Sure, it is technically on Xbox, but it's also not really on Xbox because it's all just tied to the subscription service. You can't buy it on Xbox. It's all just through Game Pass or a digital download, even if you have Rare Replay. So there are heavy limitations, and yeah, a lot of that probably comes down to the deals that were made behind the scenes, with Nintendo apparently being the stubborn one at the table. And it's a shame because that GoldenEye remake would have been awesome to come out, but hey, shout out to Nintendo for apparently shutting all of that down. Would have been just way too much fun to have. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, how do you feel about the Switch 2 priced at $450? Well, 78% say it's good for the tech or what's offered. 22% say it's too expensive for what it is. Now, I looked through some of the comments, and I mean, the most upvoted ones were like, hey, I'm more concerned with software pricing. Game prices is the real issue, right? The console price is fine. It's understandable. I get it. I understand based on the technology that's in there and what it's already doing with some of the comparisons. I mean, before the thing's even out, these are like early day zero releases. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with it because it's probably a system I'm going to have for 7 or 8 years. I mean, look, the Switch is still somehow going. I mean, it's sputtering past the finish line, but it's something that has struggled for a while now. So seeing this system, I mean, that is like leaps and bounds ahead of it, it gives you hope that it can last a bit longer and not feel like it's on its last leg around this time in its generation. Software pricing I get though, because it does feel like it's all over the place. You don't know what, say, a brand new Zelda game is going to cost after they show how awesome it is. Is this going to be a 70? Is this going to be an 80? And some of the other, like Luigi's Mansion, that's one where I'm not even sure. It's like right there in between. It's like, okay, what if they decide to try to get 80 because it looks really good? It's hard to say right now. So I understand why that is the biggest concern and the biggest pushback is around not only the uncertainty around software pricing, but also Nintendo pushing us to new heights with $80. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Resident, who says, I hope pre-orders for the Switch don't just go live and I have more time to plan. It would be a disaster if all of a sudden, sometime today, we just saw a message go, oh yeah, pre-orders are live now. Go ahead. No, it would be rough for retailers. So retailers as well, they want to get together with Nintendo. Nintendo's, I'm sure, meeting with them, talking with them through email or what have you. And the idea is to sync up a time for pre-orders to go live, probably hours and hours, maybe even days in advance so that retailers can prepare on their back end. Look, they definitely want to make sure that their own websites aren't going to crash immediately and at least do their best to mitigate things like bots. Maybe they want to set it up so it is legitimately one per customer. Well, they have to set that up for all the SKUs or most of the SKUs. So maybe like Pro controllers, one per customer, sure. Certain grips or accessories, same thing, but clearly the systems themselves. So it would not be a good idea if they go live immediately, and I don't think they will. So we'll keep an eye out. Again, I'll try to keep you guys up to date as best as I can for when the new, I guess, pre-orders and everything are ready to go live. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to hear about how some of the Switch 2 scalpers are having a really difficult time because, well, gamers decided they wanted to push back a bit, and it is certainly making things difficult for them when it comes to just listing these pre-orders online. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.